I don't like a guy who can't hold his liquor.
She was the fierce, wild blonde bombshell who broke every rule Hollywood tried to impose. The last of the original glamorous 3 M's, Mamie Van Doren wasn't just a Marilyn Monroe look-alike, she was a daring, unstoppable icon who outlived them all. But what really happened to Mamie when the spotlight faded? Her story will leave you speechless. Mamie Van Doren was born Joan Lucille Olander on February 6, 1931, in the tiny town of Rowena, South Dakota, a quiet place just 9 miles outside Sioux Falls. Her parents, Warner Carl Olander and Lucille Harriet Bennett, were hard-working folks of mostly Swedish descent with a mix of Irish and German roots. They lived simple lives. Her father worked at a rock quarry earning meager pay, while her mother, a big fan of actress Joan Crawford, named Joan after the star. Life was humble, shaped by the harsh realities of the Great Depression. Young Joan grew up on a 160-acre family farm with her maternal grandparents after her parents moved for work to Sioux City, Iowa. She sank into the rhythm of a small-town childhood, attending a 2-room schoolhouse miles away, walking through snow and rain. But despite a sickly start and multiple health scares in her early years, including 3 operations before the age of 7, she held on to big dreams which flickered from watching classic movie stars on screen. In 1942, when Joan was 11, the family moved west to Los Angeles in search of better opportunities. This move would change everything. As a teenager, she was already full-figured and striking with her naturally dark hair, but she quickly dyed it platinum blonde to catch the eye of Hollywood talent scouts, aiming to stand out in the glittering crowd. She found work as an usherette at the famous Pantages Theater on Hollywood Boulevard and even spent time singing with Ted Fiorito's band, expanding her reach into show business. She entered beauty contests and swept up local titles such as Miss Palm Springs and Miss 8 Ball by the age of 18. It was during this rise in the beauty pageant scene that the pivotal moment arrived. Joan caught the attention of legendary film producer Howard Hughes. Known both for his power and eccentricity, Hughes saw something special in Joan. He cast her in small roles in several RKO films, including minor parts in His Kind of Woman and 2 tickets to Broadway during the early 1950s. Hughes and Joan dated for several years, with the Hollywood mogul reportedly mentoring her in the industry, but the true transformation was about to happen. By 1953, Universal Studios was on the hunt for a new blonde bombshell to rival the box office power of Marilyn Monroe, who had just skyrocketed to fame. Joan Lucille Olander was signed to a 7-year contract and underwent a complete makeover. The studio rechristened her with the stage name Mamie Van Doren, a nod to First Lady Mamie Eisenhower for the first name, and an adjustment meant to reflect a more Dutch heritage, as Universal claimed she was more Dutch than Swedish. This was a savvy branding move, aligning her with the glamorous and seductive persona that Hollywood craved. Mamie Van Doren quickly carved out a niche for herself as Universal's answer to Monroe, but with a fiercer, more provocative edge. She starred in a mix of teen dramas, rock and roll musicals, comedies, and exploitation films, many of which have since become cult classics. Rather than softening her image, she embraced the role of the rebellious, uninhibited blonde bombshell willing to push boundaries in a conservative era. It was the birth of a Hollywood icon with a fearless spirit, ready to take on stardom on her own terms. After signing with Universal Studios in 1953, Mamie Van Doren quickly became one of the most memorable faces of 1950s Hollywood. Universal was looking for a star to rival Marilyn Monroe's unparalleled fame and charisma, and Mamie was hired to fill that exact role. But unlike Monroe, Mamie's image leaned toward a fiercer, more rebellious type of blonde bombshell, embracing roles that had grit and defiance woven into them. Her first major film under Universal was The All-American in 1953, a spirited college football movie where she played Susie Ward. This was just the starting point. Soon, she became a regular fixture in a variety of genre films, teen dramas, rock and roll musicals, comedies, and exploitation flicks. Films like Running Wild and Untamed Youth set her apart apart from other blondes, portraying characters who were tough, rebellious, and unafraid to challenge social norms. Mamie's talent and charisma made her a standout in films that balanced risque themes and classic storytelling. Her roles often tested the limits of the era's strict censorship codes, sometimes pushing against the Hays Code itself. High School Confidential, 1958, for example, tackled juvenile delinquency and rock and roll culture with a raw energy that was unique for its time. These movies were a fresh contrast to Marilyn Monroe's often lighter, more playful, dumb blonde roles. Van Doren was also known for her powerful screen presence, combining sensuality with attitude. She wasn't just a pretty face. She brought layers to her characters that made them memorable. Her capability to sing, dance, and act in musicals like Ain't Misbehavin' added yet another dynamic to her repertoire. Throughout the 1950s, Mamie Van Doren was famously grouped with two other iconic blondes of the era, Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield. Dubbed the 3Ms, the trio embodied the glamorous, alluring, and sometimes controversial image of the Hollywood blonde bombshell. While Monroe represented the ultimate sex symbol with vulnerability, and Mansfield, the curvaceous, bubbly pinup, Mamie projected a wild and untamed spirit that set her apart. She was the bad girl who didn't fit the typical mold. Mamie and her contemporaries were more than actresses. They were cultural icons who shaped attitudes about beauty, femininity, and sexuality in mid-century America. Off-screen, Mamie's persona was bold and feisty, earning a reputation in Hollywood as a troublemaker who wasn't afraid to push back against studio executives and their attempts to control her image. Despite the glamorous spotlight, her journey was not without obstacles. The studio system of the era dictated strict control over roles and public behavior, often putting actresses into typecast roles. Mamie resisted being boxed in, which sometimes hindered her opportunities for bigger, more prestigious parts. By the end of the 1950s, Mamie Van Doren had established a solid career, carved out of sheer grit and defiance. Her roles in films like Sex Kittens Go to College and The Private Lives of Adam and Eve showcased her willingness to take risks and maintain her signature blend of appeal and assertiveness. As the decade closed, Mamie's legacy as part of the 3Ms was firmly cemented in Hollywood history, but the challenges ahead would test her resilience and shape the next chapters of her life and career. Mamie Van Doren's Hollywood story was not just glitz and glam. It was layered with the kind of behind-the-scenes drama that the studio system often tried to keep hidden. One of the most startling revelations came from Mamie herself, who shared an eye-opening story about an arranged studio date with Rock Hudson. Universal Studios, like many studios of the time, orchestrated dates for their stars to ramp up publicity and boost careers. Rock Hudson, already a rising star, was famously kept under wraps by the studio regarding his private life. While everyone at the studio knew Hudson's truth, the public was kept in the dark. Mamie Van Doren later recalled that, despite being told not to worry because Rock did not go for girls, the night unfolded much differently. She stunned audiences by revealing that Hudson made unexpected advances toward her during their date, even recalling a moment where he was very passionate and rolling on the kitchen floor. This candid disclosure, appearing in her memoir, Playing the Field in 1987, and interviews decades later, exposed the complex facades Hollywood maintained. Mamie's openness about this encounter highlighted not just the pressures on stars to maintain an image, but the blurred lines between public relations and private realities in Tinseltown. Beyond the Rock Hudson story, Mamie's love life was equally colorful and fraught with industry politics. She had rumored affairs with legends like Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra, two of the most magnetic men in show business. Though details were often shrouded in Hollywood secrecy and whispered gossip, these relationships contributed to her notoriety as a free-spirited, unapologetically bold woman amidst an era when actresses were frequently groomed to conform. Her rebellious streak didn't end with her choice of lovers. Mamie's relationship with Universal proved turbulent and fraught with conflict. The studio was run predominantly by men who controlled not only her screen roles, but also her public image and personal decisions. When Mamie got pregnant out of wedlock in the mid-1950s, it was a scandal by the standards of the time and led to her being dropped from her contract. The studio system was unforgiving. Pregnancy without marriage was taboo, and stars faced severe consequences consequences. Despite these pressures, Mamie refused to become a passive victim. She often pushed back, claiming she did things I shouldn't have done, but standing firm in her autonomy. The Hollywood machine was relentless, but Mamie's defiance marked her as a troublemaker in some circles, a badge she wore with pride. She refused to be silenced or shaped completely by those in power. These stories, along with her electrifying on-screen persona, solidified Mamie Van Doren's place in Hollywood history, not just as another blonde bombshell, but as a woman who lived boldly, challenged norms, and left no room for half measures. Her willingness to reveal the raw, unvarnished truths from her life decades later continues to fascinate and inspire, proving that beneath the shimmering facade, there was always a fierce spirit fighting for her own story to be told. After her contract with Universal Studios came to an end in 1959, Mamie Van Doren faced the uncertain realities that many stars encounter when the studio system no longer holds their fate. Universal decided not to renew her contract, leaving Mamie to navigate the treacherous waters of Hollywood as a free agent. This shift marked a clear turning point in her career, as the glamorous, high-profile roles gave way to steady work in lower-budget B-movies and independent productions. Without the backing of a major studio, Mamie's options narrowed considerably. She starred in numerous films that lacked the prestige and polish of her Universal years. Many of these were exploitation flicks, sci-fi movies, or comedies that capitalized on her established persona as a fiery blonde bombshell, but did not provide the opportunities for dramatic or leading roles she once hoped for. Films like Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, 1968, and The Las Vegas Hillbillies, 1966, where she co-starred with fellow bombshell Jane Mansfield, reflected her determination to keep working despite the shifting tides in Hollywood. The decade was also one of immense personal reflection and change for Mamie. The tragic deaths of her contemporaries Marilyn Monroe in 1962 and Jane Mansfield in 1967 cast a long shadow over her life and career. Both were part of the legendary 3 M's, the trio of blondes who symbolized a particular era of Hollywood allure and danger. Their early and often tragic demises became a sobering reminder of the costs of fame and the pressures endured by women in the industry. Mamie not only mourned their loss, but also began to reconsider her own path, understanding that Hollywood's spotlight could be as dangerous as it was dazzling. Despite the challenges, Mamie remained fiercely independent and resilient. She refused to fade quietly into the background. Instead, she embraced the roles and opportunities available to her with characteristic grit and determination. Mamie's career in the 60s and 70s was a mix of steady acting gigs, personal ventures, and touring to entertain U.S. troops during the Vietnam War, where she brought a bit of Hollywood glamour to the front lines. Her career pause and eventual shift away from major studio films was not just about the roles she was offered, but a conscious choice influenced by the harsh realities of the Hollywood system. She wanted to avoid the self-destructive pitfalls that claimed so many of her friends and colleagues. Mamie chose to control her narrative and carefully shape her legacy rather than let the studio system dictate her fate. Years later, Mamie Van Doren would reflect on this period with a mixture of regret and pride. The ups and downs tested her spirit, but they also reinforced her identity as a trailblazer who lived life on her own terms. In her autobiographies and interviews, she candidly discusses the cost of fame and the determination to survive in an industry that often chewed up its brightest stars. As the 1970s rolled in, Mamie shifted her focus from pursuing the blockbuster spotlight to embracing a broader range of opportunities, including writing and public appearances. The legacy of her career challenges and the impact of Monroe's and Mansfield's tragic ends not only shaped her decisions, but also deepened her resolve to remain a formidable presence in Hollywood history. Mamie Van Doren's later life has been marked not by retreat, but by remarkable resilience and reinvention. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, she undertook something few of her contemporaries dared, entertaining U.S. troops in Vietnam. Unlike the more famous but heavily managed USO tours led by Bob Hope and others, Mamie chose a different, more personal path. She flew into Vietnam with a small band of musicians, traveling by helicopter into remote and often dangerous locations from the Mekong Delta to the demilitarized zone. For 3 months in 1968 and again in 1970, Mamie performed for soldiers in frontline fire bases, visited hospitals with wounded veterans including amputees and burn victims, and shared moments of camaraderie that left her changed forever. These tours were life-altering experiences that added depth to Mamie's unknown side, a compassionate woman who risked much beyond the usual glitter and glamour to show support for the troops. She spoke candidly about the toughness of those years and the personal impact of witnessing the horrors of war up close. This devotion earned her honorary military recognition decades later when Hollywood American Legion Post 43 named her an honorary colonel, a rare honor underscoring her unique connection to servicemen and women. Beyond her tours, Mamie Van Doren has lived a life rich with storytelling. Her 1987 autobiography, Playing the Field, peeled back the layers of Tinseltown, offering intimate disclosures about her career, romances, and the challenges of being a blonde bombshell in a male-dominated industry. The book was a major media splash, reviving interest in her life due to its honesty and spirited tone. Since then, she has continued to write and work on a follow-up autobiography to capture the nuanced wisdom of aging gracefully, while reflecting on decades of change in Hollywood and life. Into her 90s, Mamie has not slowed down. She remains actively involved in projects that preserve and celebrate the memory of the golden age of Hollywood. One of her current ventures includes executive producing a documentary about her extraordinary life and career, a project that promises to reveal more unseen stories and reflections. The documentary aims to introduce Mamie's legacy to a new generation, showing her as more than a pin-up girl but a cultural icon who defied odds. Living in Newport Beach, California, Mamie Van Doren, at 94, is a portrait of endurance and the power of reinvention. She maintains a presence on social media, sharing recollections, engaging with fans, and advocating support for veterans and performers. Her remarkable journey from a South Dakota farm girl to Hollywood legend continues to inspire, proving that a life lived boldly and authentically is the ultimate lasting legacy. Even after more than 7 decades since her Hollywood debut, Mamie Van Doren continues to make headlines, not just for her legendary past, but for her remarkably outspoken and lively presence today. One of the most surprising truths about Mamie is how she has embraced modern platforms to share her candid views and keep her connection with fans vibrant. Far from fading into quiet retirement, Mamie maintains an active social media presence where she posts essays, reflections, and cultural commentary. At 94 years old, she has become a symbol of fearless authenticity in an age when many celebrities carefully curate every public moment. In 2024, Mamie released a single titled I Told Ya I Love Ya, Now Get Out, in collaboration with the orchestral band Pink Martini under Hines Records. The track's blend of playful sass and vintage glamour perfectly reflects Mamie's persona, bold, fun, and unapologetically herself. This musical venture caught many by surprise, adding yet another creative chapter to her storied career and showing she is far from done entertaining the world. The most significant spotlight on Mamie Van Doren in recent years has been the production of the authorized documentary Mamie Exposed: The Life and Loves of the Last Blonde Bombshell. Filming began in 2024 and continued into 2025, with locations spanning from Los Angeles to her home in Newport Beach. Mamie serves as the executive producer, granting the filmmakers unprecedented access to her life and memories. The documentary promises to unveil intimate secrets, fresh insights, and candid moments that Mamie had kept private for decades. Mamie Exposed has generated buzz for its promise to challenge the usual glamorized Hollywood narrative by exploring the raw, unfiltered reality of a woman who navigated fame, scandal, and survival with tenacity. Mamie herself acknowledges that for most of her life, she guarded her privacy fiercely, but now, at this stage, she welcomes the chance to reveal the never-before-shared moments of her incredible journey. The film features interviews with Mamie, her family, close friends, and Hollywood historians who collectively paint a vivid portrait of the last surviving blonde bombshell of the 1950s. Adding to this renewed interest, Mamie has been outspoken about the changing tides in Hollywood, particularly reflecting on movements like #MeToo. While she recognizes the importance of supporting those with grievances, she has also spoken about her own fierce defense against predatory behavior during her career, emphasizing her readiness to fight back against anyone who tried to take advantage of her. In recent interviews, Mamie has mixed nostalgia with a clear-eyed view of the industry's evolution. She admits that Hollywood has been both cruel and rewarding, but insists that her choices and sometimes rebellious nature future were her way of maintaining control over her life and legacy. Her ability to adapt and assert herself into her 90s has captivated many and challenges stereotypes of aging in entertainment. Beyond the documentary and music, Mamie's life is peppered with ongoing projects, including her third memoir, which offers a more personal glimpse into her daily life, relationships, and the reflections of growing older with humor and wisdom. She has also shared stories about her pet parrot, China, highlighting the unusual and heartwarming parts of her off-screen world. Mamie Van Doren remains a figure who defies easy categorization. The rumors and revelations from 2024 to 2025 paint a picture of a woman who is as fierce and outspoken as ever, unafraid to share her story in her own words and eager to connect with both longtime fans and new generations. Her story is far from finished, and it continues to surprise. Mamie Van Doren is a true Hollywood trailblazer who defied convention at every turn. From her daring roles during the golden age of cinema to her fearless defiance of studio restrictions, she forged a path uniquely her own. Outliving many of her peers, Mamie remains a vibrant symbol of resilience and reinvention, continuing to captivate audiences even in her 90s. Her story is a powerful reminder that legacy is not just about fame, but about the courage to live authentically and embrace every chapter, no matter the challenges. As the last of the original blonde bombshells, Mamie Van Doren's life encourages us to keep surprising the world with our strength and spirit. If you enjoyed this deep dive into her extraordinary journey, be sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more fascinating stories from Hollywood's golden era and beyond.